Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Raceface.pro GT3 Sprint Series Round 3 right here at Barcelona. And we have got quite a interesting race coming up. Not a massive turnout of cars, but we're going to see some very, very close racing action right here at Barcelona, where it's using the older variant of the circuit layout, so that is going to be something for the drivers to bear in mind during their race. It's not the historic layout where you've got extreme pace on the back through section 3, or even where you've got the MotoGP circuit where you don't have to worry about the fuddy-duddy chicane right at the end. Let's take a look at our track preview of Barcelona that our drivers will be going on this evening for the Raceface.pro GT3 Sprint Series. Down the main straight they will go, heading into turn 1, hard braking into the right-hander, through Elf into a left-hander before you start making your way through Renault. And once you gently power your way through, you've got to get very careful on the braking through Repsol, make your way around the right-hander, and follow your way through, all the way through Wraith, Capsa, Bannock, Sanibel, before you hit the little chicane that's towards the end after Leclerc. Well, in Leclerc, which is the hardest braking zone of the circuit, historic, you actually use the little carry on going straight. You don't get as tight of a bend before you head to Banca Sanibel and through the little chicane into New Holland and back on the power down the main straight. So this is going to be our race this evening. And as I said, a little bit of a lower turnout than planned for the grid, but still got some drivers out there ready to have a bit of fun. Bernard Barkhuizen, who's been turning heads at the moment and has been a driver to keep an eye on, taking his fight all the way to the front and pushing drivers to the limits like Christopher Radloff, Ryan Ottens and such that have had a bit of a difficult time. Kieran Patterson, who puts himself into first place, returning after last season, was just getting back into the seat, now looking to take the fight once again to the top end of the field and reclaim titles that he's once had. Then you have got Bego Krobler out in the Aston Martin. He's going to be trying to get a little bit more pace underneath him. Eric Hustain as well. Jason McGregor is making his way around the circuit. Alan Patterson also out there on the track, joining his son. So the father-son duo looking to represent the PWSR team and have a bit of fun. Tini and Kube out on the track, going and rocketing around. Dion van Skalkwijk out in Agarai Racing Porsche. And Agarai Racing actually comes from the real world karting. So it's good to see the angry racing coming in. So Dion van Skalkwijk, welcome. Good to have you out in the sim world. I know you've been doing karting in the sim world, but it's good to see you out in the world of GT3s. A little bit different. It's got a roof and doors and an engine that's slightly... It's a whole lot for... It's a lot of fun. Good to have you out here. Cameron Bastos for the PWSR team. Had lots of races with him during the off time. Good to see him out there having a lot of fun and also keeping a good sense of humor. And he's been talking to Daniel de Villiers in trying to get some tips of how to pull the trigger on a couple of targets as well. And then you got Tinas Buerta, who is out on the circuit. So as it stands, Kieran Patterson leading out the charge. He's got the fastest lap time, 1:43.3, as he powers his way through, trying to improve his laps every step of the way, hoping that that's going to claw his way to victory. Bernard Barkhuizen with a 1:43.690, only 0.3 of a second behind. Then you've got Jason McGregor in the Honda NSX, and also if you head over to America, that's actually called the Kari. Or the Scari, I do apologize, that's out there. Is it a Scari or a Kari? I can't quite remember. The two are very close in naming. But built on the same chassis, same engine, just different badge. But that's because Honda rebrands themselves over in America. Tini and Kube coming across the line, heading into turn 1 in the Lamborghini Evo 2. He's going to be having a great bit of fun, looking to take the fight to the sharp end of the field. He's had a difficult race, so let's see how it's going to battle as they make their way around the circuit. Bago Krobler in the Aston Martin, as we saw Bernard Barkhuizen. So 10 cars out on the track for our Pro 7. We do have a Pro-Am that's running actively at the moment. They are also in their race. So the pros, a little bit of a different time, bit of a smaller grid, but valuable 10 points to go out on the grid as well for each of the drivers. So I would say win some, lose some. Depends on which part of the table that you're on. For a driver, this is ideal in terms of maximizing points, but in terms of having not many cars on the grid does make things a little bit more tricky, because now you have to ensure you're a lot closer to pace to your competition, which I think Kieran Patterson and Bernard Barkhuizen, as it stands, both running a 143.335, and Bernard Barkhuizen a 143.395. Jason McGregor pulling in the pits. Pago Krobler now is exiting. Eric Kirstein, Cameron de Bastos, Tini Nkube, Alan Patterson, Dion van Skalkwijk, and likes of Tienes Buerta still needing to put a valid lap time in the McLaren Evo. And not an easy car, lots of rear rotation that can throw you out of whack very, very quickly. Also scored the name of a McFlurry at one point. That was coined by the likes of Reginald, calling it the McFlurry for quite some time. He puts himself into 6th place, so he's able to get a time on the board, a 144.3. So close times from 4th all the way down to 10th, and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, all running those 143. So those are going to be ones to keep an eye out for as they put the power down and look forward to what they're going to need to do this evening for tonight's race right here at Raceface.pro. And like always, make sure you hit the subscribe button along with the bell notification icon to keep up to date with all the racing that happens out on the YouTube channel. And we do have a couple of spectators watching from afar, going and keeping an eye out on it. I know that we have a couple of guys from the ZRC going and supporting their friends, like Cameron Bastos, who they've been practicing with, so I know they are keeping a very close eye on that. We've got a couple of PWSR members like Daniel de Villiers that's also watching, and unfortunately we do have a couple of guys unable to race due to load shedding here in South Africa. So that is going to hamper the efforts, and they will be looking at their rounds very, very closely of what's going to work for them. As Alan stops across the line, he is getting his lap times done and dusted. 5 minutes and 25 seconds to go right here at Raceface for round 3 of our Raceface GT3 Sprint Series. This is our Pro Division. So thinned out, but still looking to go and put in some good action with those lap times. Valuable points on the line for the likes of Kieran Patterson, Bernard Barkhuizen, and a little bit further down as well. So the guys are going to be pushing themselves just that little bit harder to score a few valuable points that will make or break their races. So this is going to be one to keep an eye out for. This is going to be a run down to the wire, an active nutrition for the world of sim racing. Also, what does happen towards the end of the year, we do see a lot of sim racing start tapering off. The drivers getting a bit worn out, lots of racing going on, everyone darting all over the show, and eventually you start burning candle at both ends of the stick. That also tends to wear out drivers as they make their way through. So, one pit stop needed for the race, one pit stop mandatory, so they've got to work out their fueling to ensure that they can get the best out of that pit stop. They will also be looking at what's going to help them for the likes of their tires, especially here at Barcelona. The tires do take a monster knock. So we'll have to keep a very, very close eye on that situation, see if they're going to be able to manage the tires, or whether we're going to see some changes going on. Drivers still making their way through, trying to figure out what they can do to improve themselves at this point. Not going to be an easy run. They will have to try and figure out how it's going to work out come the end of the evening. Who will be able to claw their way to victory? Only time will tell, with at the moment Kieran Patterson with a monstrous of a lap time behind him will be ensuring to try and keep up the pace. So, as they make their way through, trying to get a little bit more underneath them, thinking what's going to be their advantage here. How can they improve their lap times? What's going to be the ideal situation for the drivers to ensure that they can keep up this pace? Not an easy one to start processing and try to figure out how it's all going to work, especially with the racing at hand. It's going to be incredibly tight for every single one of our drivers. As they make their way through, finishing up 2 minutes to go, this is where the questions start getting asked. Is it worth carrying on pushing, or is it going to be taking a breather at this point of what's going to be better for them over a 55-minute race? Is it going to be trying to break those lap times down? At this point, it's also trying to go and utilize the time to just work out what your feeling's going to be, what your strategy is going to be, a little bit of practice efforts in race conditions that is going to benefit you. You've been practicing out on a server that may have 1 or 2 people. If not, you are by yourself. This time you're out on the track. You can feel the change in dynamics that's going on, and that will start to evolve things a little bit further in terms of your planning and what's going to work out. I know when I sat down with a couple of ACC guys when I was getting back into it, I had some very true words spoken to me of feel the cars out, don't push too hard, feel how the track changes underneath you. And I think I had Daniel de Villiers, who was in the Nissan at the time, the Hitman, going and making sure to drive, put me offline to feel what the track surface can do. And he went and turned around and said, what will be the best benefit for drivers is to learn how to go and drive offline in case something goes on. I see Magic Valorant jumping into the grandstands. He's going and putting in a bit of support for Bagar Krobler out in the Aston Martin. So good to see some support coming out towards our drivers. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, while you keep an eye on this, make sure that you go and let us know in the comments who do you think is going to be clawing their way to victory and charging their way through. Also, do want to point out we do have a couple of drivers that are, well, they were racing during this championship. They are currently racing in overseas championships, and from that side we'd like to say a personal good luck to them racing in overseas championships as well, representing the flag. Kirsten getting a bit of support, and also McGregor, so fellow teammate of the Hybrid Academy, going and putting in some support for Eric Kirstein and Jason McGregor, who's been putting out a bit of a charge, but just weren't fast enough to catch out Kieran Patterson at this point. Kirstein is 0.1 up, but he can at this point jump his teammate Bago Krobler. It's going to be close. Cameron de Bastos also still putting in the times. He's trying to improve his lap time to get a little bit more pace underneath him. Skulkvik working through the final sector now, will be getting on the power. The 992 Porsche GT3 going and standing on the throttle. Will it be enough? Debut outing and finishing up in 10th place in qualifying. Cameron de Bastos trying to make his way through the last sector as well, hoping to improve his lap time. Eric Kirstein also coming into the final sector, will be getting on the power as quick as possible, sliding his way through. Not going to help in that 296 Ferrari. as he tries to figure out what's going to work for him at this point. He's 0.1 up on it. He can jump his fellow teammate, and this is going to be a proper run. And as he comes across the line and just not able to get it. Nico Ben Killerman, don't know any of the best drivers, but I'm here to support the best commentator. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Killerman, but we do have some incredible drivers, and I'm not the best. I will point that out. Still lots to learn, but you guys keep me on my feet. Let's take a look back to our track preview while our drivers line themselves back up on the line for their race this evening. Nico Killerman, for anyone that doesn't know, races in the TCRs, out in iRacing, and also races in the F4, so he's coming from a little bit of a different background of racing, but supporting the drivers that are here. So shout out to Nico Killerman. Good to have you here. Good to see some interaction between the different sim races. So, Kieran Patterson out in first place. Keep an eye on the pink PWSR, looking to dominate this time round. But Bernard Barkhuizen from the KSR factory team is looking to put a dampener on things. Jason McGregor out in third place. Bego Krobler in fourth. Eric Kirstein in fifth. Cameron de Bastos along with Tennis Buerta, Tini Nkube, Alan Patterson, and Dion van Skalkweg make his debut outing for Angry Racing, going and jumping. Good to see Angry Racing out there. Very, very good. And know them from the karting, so it's really, really enjoyable to see that coming out. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as they lined up, it is going to be going 3 corners technically before they will be racing. So enough to get as much heat as they can into those tires, as much heat into those brakes, and looking to power their way through to the line. Kieran Patterson, though, will be dictating the pace at the start. They do have a mandatory speed limit that they have to follow, which is 70 k's an hour, that they will have to bear that in mind. We do have Jim out going and will be calling green, and also when pit lane opens and closes. Then we also do have Tim, who's our cameraman, who's giving us all the shots. So big shout out to Jim and Tim for all their hard work. And one day we're going to get them a Christmas present, I think, for certain. Nico going and saying the black Porsche looks really cool. Well, I think it's meant to actually have a custom livery on it, but we don't have that livery loaded, unfortunately. Didn't seem to pull through, so he is in a bit of a stealth black, and we'll be looking to try and make his way through very stealthy like a bomber. Kieran Patterson off to the charge, will be trying to get away early on from the likes of Bernard Barkhuizen in the BMW, who has moved up from Pro-Am into Pro and has been showing off some great pace, but lining up side by side. Jason McGregor, Bego Krobler, the two teammates, will be communicating with one another. Alan Patterson talking to Cameron de Bastos, saying, listen, we got to back Kieran up as much as possible, especially for the start of the race. Lights are waiting, Jim's waiting on the button, and there we go. We're racing 55 minutes for round 3. Bernard Barkhuizen getting the jump off the line. Kieran Patterson trying to defend the inside line, has got the likes of Jason McGregor looking to try and make it 3 wide. Kieran goes deep under braking, side by side, little bit of paint rub between the two. First and second place, Kieran gets a little bit of a bump from Bernard, comes back just behind Jason McGregor, and in front of Bego Krobler. Bego loses the power, and that allows Cameron de Bastos to sneak right behind Kieran Patterson. Bego Krobler has got Tennis Buerta now behind him. That's got the likes of Dion up on the inside. Dene. So Dene going and getting the power on early, trying to claw his way up from 10th position, has moved up into 6th ahead of Eric Kirstein, who's now gone side by side with Tennis Buerta. Alan Patterson and Tini Nkube, they are just watching this fight ahead of them and seeing the two Hybrid Academy cars going and running a little bit of formation flying at the moment for the early parts of the race. But it does look like Buerta runs out wide. That is going to compromise his drive for Alan Patterson to try to take a look. Alan backs out of it and now has Tini Nkube in the same machinery to come around, looking for the outside line. Alan's going to try and guard that inside line, under braking. Couldn't get it all sorted out to get on the inside of Tennis Buerta, but defends beautifully to keep the likes of Nkube behind. So out in front, Barkhuizen, Jason McGregor, Kieran Patterson along with Cameron de Bastos, Bego Krobler, today. Van Skalkvik, Erik Hussein, Tinus Buerta, Alan Persson, and Tini and Kube are fighting out. Tini right up against the back of him. Bat out in the front. It is Jason McGregor dealing with Kieran Patterson at the moment. Kieran had that unfortunate contact at the start, which compromised his drive. Will be trying to figure out what can he do to get past the little Honda and possibly under braking as well. Bego Krobler feeling the pressure from behind as he has got Van Skalkvik. Oh, little bit of contact between Van Skalkvik and Bego Krobler. Bego trying to return it back to the circuit. Skalkvik going and allowing the cars not wanting to take advantage there, but Alan Patterson says more than thank you to get past, and it looks like Tini and Kube is also going to take the fight to him. So Bego having a little bit of a rough race, losing another position. That's the Lamborghini, lunges in, gets it under braking. The Aston Martin with that understeer coming from the front of it, not able to go and battle it out against the Lamborghini's rotation. Will have to consider things a little bit further back, and now Nkube will be getting back onto the power. Van Skalkvik will be chasing down Krobler as quick as possible as they make their way through. We've seen Van Skalkvik claw his way from last all the way through, and Tim the cameraman once again getting some beautiful shots of the grass growing. He's a... Did you know, some say Tim the cameraman has the best garden in the world, that even the Queen used to pick roses. The Queen of the UK used to pick roses from his garden. Others say he went and sculpted his garden from the remnants of a volcano. But that's all we know about Tim the cameraman. And all of it absolutely true. So as they power their way through, oh, Kube getting contact from Bego. Bego tries to pull it back, and Van Skalkvik slamming on the anchors, did not want to be part of that. They lost out the drive, but Kube getting a bit turned around by Bego as they made their way through. So let's see if we can get a little bit of an inside shot. Let's go back roughly 30 seconds and look from the helmet of Bego Krobler, trying to dive up on the inside of Nkube. Takes the lunge, tries to see a gap, slight contact onto the right. Bego eventually gets a little bit of a tap from Van Skalkvik as he tries to correct himself, and the grid now starting to open up. Remember, it's 55 minutes of racing, so lunges early on in the race may not be beneficial for your time out in the sun. Bernard Barkhuizen, though, is fighting out with Jason McGregor, now chasing onto the back of him. McGregor is going to try and utilize the tow. Little Honda NSX, once a car never picked for its heavy tire degradation, now getting chosen to have a bit of fun. Honestly, I was going to say, when I originally drove it, it was quite a fun little car if you could get it right, but if you got it wrong, well, you learnt the hard way. You felt like a character, you felt like a side character in Attack on Titan when you got it wrong. So now Bernard Barkhuizen trying to keep ahead of Jason McGregor. Will be trying to get on the power a little bit early on. 5 minutes done and dusted of the racing. And Barkhuizen starting to try and open up the distance a little bit. McGregor lunging under the braking zone to try and close it down on Barkhuizen. Not able to do it. But you can see the difference between the BMW and the mid-engine cars like Jason McGregor's Honda. That's four-cylinder turbocharged, trying to just get a little bit more rotation. Does look to the inside, backs out of it. He's got the slipstream. Barkhuizen going to run it out a little bit wide, take a late apex, try and carve his way through. BMW a little bit easier on the curbs compared to the likes of the Honda, which is a lot more temperamental than most. Then you got Kieran Patterson out in the McLaren, chasing him down with Cameron de Bastos also trying to close down on fellow teammate Erik Hussein. Tinus Buerta, Alan Patterson a little bit further back is keeping an eye on the rearview mirror with Tini and Kube, Bego Krobler, and Van Skalkvik, who is now a little bit further down the order after having to come to a complete stop to avoid major contact. I mean, that is just, it happens. It really does. McGregor tried looking to get past Barkhuizen around the outside, couldn't get it all sorted out, runs over the curb. That is going to compromise his drive, and now has got Kieran Patterson a little bit closer and closer in striking distance as they make their way into the left-hander. So Kieran's going to really start laying in the power now, forcing the likes of McGregor to brake a little bit harder, go a little bit deeper into the corners, start abusing those track limits a little bit. You remember, they do have 3 warnings before they start given drive-through penalties for track limits exceeded, and that is going to impact the racing a little bit. So you've got to be well aware of where you're braking, where your marks are. As you can see, McGregor once again going too deep into the corner, starting to lose that time. He's going to have to try and dial it back a little bit, think about the long game. A bit further back, Bego Krobler going onto the back of Tini and Kube, as we see Alan Patterson pulling into the pits. Alan going to try and get that first pit stop out of the way, and we do know these cars can go 45 minutes to roughly, I think the longest I've been is about 57 minutes on a tank, and a fresh set of tires as well. But Bagger Krobler looking to just go and abuse the tires a little bit, asking for lots of mechanical grip under braking, gets past Kube. Kube is immediately right up against the back of him. So that's going to be that sort of battle for now. Kieran Patterson, though, closing on the back of Jason McGregor as they fight their way through. Alan Patterson has completed his pit stop. That is going to help him out in the long run. And no! Alan Patterson with a disqualification. Alan Patterson has been disqualified by the sim, and that has taken him out. Whether that's been for speeding or something, but Alan Patterson has been disqualified out of the race, and that takes him clean out of it, removing top 10 points, and that's not going to help him. But knowing the frustration, he's going to be bubbling a little bit, calm it down, and then start focusing on these fellow competitors, and keep an eye on Kieran Patterson, who's trying to make his way through. Kieran Patterson hoping to get a little bit more pace underneath him, as Jason McGregor once again going too deep into the corner, starting to lose that little bit of time. So our drivers pushing harder and harder as it stands. McGregor hoping to get past Bernard Barkhuizen, has got a lot of work ahead of him, as Bernard Barkhuizen starting to stretch open the gap a little bit more as they carve their way through. It is going to be a bit of an effort between them to try and optimize tire usage at this point. But we do have PitLink up and going. Pitwall is up for live timing. If you guys want to keep an eye on all the sector times, see what's going on, that is currently live for everyone to go and see. Rather helpful information from a spectator's point of view, and also to keep an eye on the racing that's currently at hand. Jason McGregor hoping to try and get ahead of the likes of Kieran Patterson a lot quicker, as they carve their way through here at Barcelona. Under braking, Kieran Patterson trying to go a little bit deeper than McLaren, pushing harder and harder onto the back of the Honda. Is closer this time around, will try and get into the toe, not able to do it just as yet, as he tries to go a little bit later under braking. He's getting sick and tired of seeing the rear tail lights of the Honda NSX. Gotta say, never used to be a fan of the Honda until I eventually saw it out at Kyalami, and then the little car that could, would, and nearly did. Nearly won the Kyalami 9 hour and was the only Honda that was racing. Beautiful looking car, and in person, in sim, just doesn't do it the same justice. While the McLaren, on the other hand, the 720S, not my favorite of vehicle to look at compared to like the MP4-12C. That still to me is the ultimate GT3 McLaren, but the 720S really putting on a great show. The 570 GT4, I gotta say, is one of the better McLarens over time. So Bernard Barkhuizen out in front, Jason McGregor, Kieran Patterson, Cameron de Bastos, Eric Kirstein, Tianis Buerta, Bego Krobler, Tini Nkube, and Van Schalkwyk still fighting it out. Van Schalkwyk has now been promoted up into 9th position, but is way down the order, 4 seconds away from Nkube at the moment, but that can be made up in the pit lane, because when you stop, you can put a little bit of fuel in. You have to put at least 1 liter in the car. Tires are optional, so you don't have to change your tires, and that is going to come into effect So who can preserve the tyres the longest? Kieran looks for the inside line, couldn't make it past, and it's got Jason McGregor trying to get into the little bit more pace underneath him. So McGregor goes out wide line. Kieran second guesses it, going into the sharp left-hander. Couldn't make the pass, but he's going to rather keep it going. Keep laying the pressure onto the back of McGregor, and that will help out Cameron Bassos, because the two of them will be communicating back and forward what's happening between their tyres. Well, Jason McGregor, his closest teammate is all the way down in 5th place, and that is Eric Kirstein in the Ferrari 296, which is a completely different behemoth compared to the like of the McLaren. Then you got the Honda. Then you got Tennis Buerta, Bego Krobler, and Tinian Kube is still making his way around. He's going to be breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief at the moment as he tries to pie his way through, but is starting to lose time. 3.6 seconds before Van Schalkwyk starts becoming a little bit more of a problem to him, and you'll see exactly why. The Angry Racing have been on the top of the game in terms of South African karting for many, many, many years in that regard. Jason McGregor going out wide, Kieran Patterson trying to come back at him. They're roughly about within a second of one another here at Barcelona, and this is where we're going to starting to think of where the pit stop strategies are going to come in. How far do you want to go into the race? Do you want to take it to the last 20 minutes? Do you want to take it into the last 10, the last 5? You know you can stretch it out. Maybe at this point, due to a lower field of the 9 cars that are currently out here, going a little bit later into the race is going to be more beneficial than an earlier pit stop, because an earlier pit stop means that you're going to drop too far down the order. So try and run that tank dry as much as possible. Go as deep into your stint as possible until that red flashing light where it says you're running out of fuel eventually turns off, because it's sick and tired of trying to tell you the same thing and you've been ignoring it, much like your grade 12 homework. No, better yet, much like your grade 5 homework, and you're arriving on the day. For anyone that's still in school, or he remembers those school days of ignoring homework, you'll get that one. So, Kieran Patterson, a little bit too deep into the last sector, the last 2 corners. He needs to try and back it off a little bit. He's pushing harder and harder, trying to close down under the braking zone, and unfortunately just running a little bit too much. Dialing it back a little bit, focusing on the tires may be a beneficial time at this point. Jason McGregor, on the other hand, is starting to feel a little bit of pressure. He's got a bit of a rubber band effect. He's gaining and losing at the same time. Through Sector 1, starts closing up on the likes of Bernard Barkhuizen, but just loses out through Sector 2, Sector 3, and that falls into the clutches of Kieran Patterson. So that frustration of yawing back and forth is starting to show more and more. Bego Krobler, he's trying to go after Tennis Buerta ahead of him in 6th place. So Tennis Buerta just trying to stretch out his legs. Tenny and Kube also closing down the distance. So our drivers hoping that they can get a little bit more pace underneath him. Barkhuizen runs out wide over the curb, losing out a lot of drive. McGregor trying to get a little bit more pace underneath him, sees the mistake starting to creep in for that BMW, and maybe, just maybe, it's hit a point in its tires that it's starting to slide around. It's starting to get uncomfortable, and you've got to try and get rid of the grain on those tires. You've got to drive through this period. You start with no grip, then you get quite a bit of grip. You eventually start getting into this very slushy phase where the car just slides around, where it's not maximizing its grip as much as you would like to. You've got to drive through it, you've got to push it, you've got to scrub as much as you can, and you'll eventually get the tires back to where you like them before they start looking to drop off a cliff. And you can see Bernard Barkhuizen realizing the threat of Jason McGregor at the hand, trying to move to the inside line, trying to move back before the turn 1, just seeing if he can maybe break the toe a little bit. And at the same time, Jason McGregor will be picking up a bit of marbles under braking, so he's hoping that maybe just that extra bit of marbles sitting underneath the tires is going to slow him up. But unfortunately didn't work. Bernard Barkhuizen actually had to hit the brakes a bit earlier because he drove on the exact same stuff. That allowed Jason McGregor to close up the distance. So Barkhuizen now trying to figure out what's going to work, as he's got the likes of McGregor on the back back of him as we jump on board. This is the rear cam, and you can see McGregor underbraking immediately right up against the back of him, has to back out of it, and that BMW starting to look more and more squirrely as he gets the power down, not having the rears going and coping with him. And Kube pulling into the pits though is going to be getting his his mandatory pit stop out the way, and that will help him. Jason McGregor taking a look off his rear spoiler. You can see that Kieran's not trying to swing back on the track as quickly as the likes of McGregor. He's focusing on just trying to keep the car as straight as possible and try and slow the car down in a straight line. He's not going to do any aggravating moves at the moment that may unsettle the rear of the car and cause it to over rotate through the corners or even prior to the corners. So that's going to be one to keep an eye out for, as McGregor late on the brakes once again tries to get right up against Bernard Barkhuizen, and Kieran Patterson closes up. I do feel at this point Jason McGregor is pushing a tad too hard. Tinas Buerta and Bagar Krobler, they look like they have come to blows. So that's going to be losing out a bit of time. Stephanie Brummer going and saying, where can we find the link? So it's Pitwall. I will go and ask Tim to share it as we see Bagar Krobler up against Tinas Buerta, looking towards the inside, trying to get past at the moment. Going to try and go a little bit late under braking. Sends it up on the inside. Buerta not going to fight it, knowing it's his teammate, and also knowing that there's still quite a bit of racing to go. They're going to be keeping a bit of a close eye on that situation. So, for Bremer, there we go. The likes of just putting that in to your chat, you'll eventually find the sector time. So, Stephanie, hopefully that helps for their sector times at pitwall.live timing RF. So, you can even go to Pitwall and see it out there. Hopefully that helps. I understand you're keeping a close eye on the different drivers. Van Skolkvik trying to make his way forward. Tinas Buerta is still out there. It does look like we have lost in Kube, and Kube is out of the race, so that's going to go and impact his race a little bit more and lose out some valuable points. So we are down to 8 drivers at the moment. The grid getting a little bit smaller, but it's due to earlier incidents, like we had Alan Patterson having that disqualification coming up right at the start when he went for the pit stop. I truly think what happened is he sped in the pits. That gave him a penalty, stopped in the box, and then received a second penalty going out, getting off the pit limiter too early, and that eventually impacted his drive. Take a look at Kieran Patterson's strategy compared to the others. He's going to keep off the marbles. He's going to allow the other drivers to go on the marbles. He's going to maintain his line, while Barkhuizen and McGregor are going to try and drive each other to the fringes of the circuit, compromising their turn 1, turn 2, because it takes quite a bit to scrub those tires clean, especially through sector 1, through turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3. You're going to be driving on roller skates as you make your way through. So this is going to be a proper monstrous fight between them. Bernard Barkhuizen has got Jason McGregor right up against the back of him. Kieran Patterson trying to get a little bit closer. McGregor trying to go around the outside. Couldn't make it stick this time round. Will have to go a little bit later on the brakes to just claw right up behind. Does go over the curbing a little bit. That is going to allow Kieran to close down the distance as mistakes are being made. Kieran looks up on the inside, tried utilizing all the road. Barkhuizen trying to get a little bit more drive. Kieran this time a little bit more threatening, as it does look like McGregor went to the middle of the circuit, forcing Kieran to look left or right, try and figure out what's going to be the ideal line for him. Couldn't get it all sorted out. He's going to back out of it, wait for an opportunity, then go back at it. McGregor at this point will be going to look to the inside line with Bernard Barkhuizen. He's going to try and keep that toe, and if Kieran Patterson's going to stick to the outside line, he will be able to make it up through turn 2, turn 3, because he hasn't got all the rubbish stuck to his tires, much like what Barkhuizen and McGregor are going to do. Let's see if they are going to do it. No, this time around, not. Barkhuizen is going to hold his line. McGregor is going to follow nose to tail with him. McGregor does look to try go around the outside. Barkhuizen trying to just go and come across to defend his line through the inside. Couldn't get it all together. Kieran Patterson, though, will have to lift ever so slightly to allow the two to go and battle it out. But that does go and improve his drive out of turn 2, out into turn 3, will be standing on the gas, getting right underneath the rear wing of McGregor. Looks up on the inside, not close enough to make anything work as yet, or any way to put the nose of that 720S McLaren up against the Honda NSX of McGregor in second place. But Kieran is going to try and stand on the gas a little bit more. The PWSR Alpha car hoping to carry a bit more pace through the corner. McGregor gets it properly sideways, and Kieran getting a terrible amount of understeer, but did get a much better drive. That is going to close up. Now this is where McGregor's got the problem. A long straight to try and power their way through as they claw their way down through the corner, and it does look like McGregor managing to hold him at bay. So these two are going tooth and nail at one another. Bernard Barkhuizen now breathing a sigh of relief as he carries on the power to start opening up the distance. He's just over a second at this point to the likes of McGregor and Patterson as they fight it out. McGregor getting it sideways once again, doing a little bit of Tokyo drift, and that's not going to help him. Or would I say initial D, more like it, as for the drifting. Going back to earlier days before Tokyo Drift. So for all the younger guys that were born in the 1990s and early 2000s, initial D, that's what we're seeing on circuit with McGregor, with Kieran Patterson keeping a very close third place. So currently, as it stands, Bernard Barkhuizen out in first, Jason McGregor in second, Kieran Patterson in third, Cameron de Bastos in fourth, fifth, Eric Kirstein, followed by Bego Krobler, Tinus Buerta, and just down the road, 1 second. Remember, he had a 4-second deficit after standing on the brakes. Van Schalkwyk now trying to close down and get a little bit more into the fight after Tinus Buerta. They do have that mandatory pit stop. They have to put 1 liter of fuel in the car. They don't have to change tires, and that will make the difference. If he can just try and figure out what's going to be that extra little bit, what's going to get you through the corners that little bit more, well, we're going to see it all happening here tonight as we start running through. 31 minutes to go. Kieran Patterson still laying on mountains and mountains of pressure onto Jason McGregor, the Hybrid Academy driver, getting pressure from the PWSR car of Kieran Patterson. Bernard Barkhuizen watching his rearview mirror like a hawk at the moment because he's seeing the likes of McGregor and Kieran breaking later and later, and he's just going to be worrying about if they start closing too far up onto the back of him through the corners that he will have to push off the line and compromise his exit. Doesn't want to do that. He wants to try and open up the distance. BMW going and trying to be as stable as possible. That will be starting to suffer with a bit of understeer coming from it, where the Honda and the McLaren will be starting to suffer with a bit of oversteer as the rear's starting to let go, especially on Jason McGregor's car, where he's been pushing harder and harder and getting a little bit more of a slide. At this point, you start taking a look at your traction control systems, where there is 2 systems in these cars. They have got a TC1, which is your gain, which is forward and back. Then you've got your slip, which is your TC2, which is your left and right. You start turning that slightly up. Turn your TC2 up just to try and settle the rear a little bit. Try and save the tires a little bit more, especially if you're going to one-stop it at this point. As we've gone past the 30-minute mark, Kieran Patterson is going to still mount on the pressure to Jason McGregor. I think that's what he's trying to do here. He's getting Alan in his ears, telling him, listen, focus on the charge, let's keep it all together, and let's just keep the pressure mounted firmly on the back of that Honda as they claw their way through. A little bit further back, Van Schalkwyk now closing down within a second and under to Tinus Buerta. These two have never squared up against one another, and now they're going to square up out on Barcelona. That is going to change things up for our drivers as they focus on the charge. Likes of Tinus Buerta managing to get a better exit through Sector 2 will help get away from that Porsche 992 that does have an inherent way of driving until the tires start falling off a cliff. They start losing the grip. The life runs out of them. They age rapidly, if I can put it that way, as you wear them down and you start losing grip. You start having less and less of that front end grip to bite in through the corners. Kieran Patterson pulling into the pits. He's opting to get himself sorted out, knowing that he's getting a little bit of time lost. That is going to get him in. So does Cameron Bastos. So it looks like a team order came through of get yourselves into the pits. Let's concentrate on trying to make up a bit of time. That is going to allow Eric Hussein to get up into 3rd place and Bego Krobler up into 4th. So Bego now trying to step it up. They're going to be keeping a very close eye on Tianus Buerta, who comes by, and Van Skalkwyk as well. So they have been promoted up. So Kieran Patterson and Cameron Bastos running 7th and 8th as it stands. But the 2 PWSR cars looking up their sleeves to try and pull a rabbit out of the hat on this one. Barkhuizen driving out wide, losing a lot of drive, and Jason McGregor a little bit too tight, also losing a severe amount of drive. Will be trying to figure out. There's one thing about these cars is you've got to be so particular on your lines. Too tight and you'll kill off your tires far too quickly. Too wide and you will run onto the marbles, onto the dirt, and that will also slide you around. That can take a huge chunk of life out of your tires. Also compromise your racing as much as possible. So you going into it. So taking a look at the pit stop times, Kieran Patterson is out and Cameron Bastos is out. They did splash and dash. 8.2 seconds for Kieran Patterson was stopped in the box. Took him overall of roughly about 32 seconds. And then you've got Cameron Bastos, the 13.4, so he added a little bit more into the tank, or maybe had some repairs that needed to be done, just 1 or 2 seconds. That was a little bit more than planned. That can be from any contact going on. Jason McGregor diving into the pits. He's trying to get himself sorted. Gets very close to the pit wall. Not to go and smack the pit wall on the way of entry. And that's going to allow Eric Kirstein to get in. So McGregor into the pits. Kirstein getting on the power. Will be taking 2nd place. And launching his way through. Bego Krobler, Tianus Buerta also going to continue their drive. Van Skalkwyk closing down the distance to Buerta, and Buerta now not focusing on strategy but more on the lines of this Porsche of the Angry Racing team, going and closing down at a rate of knots. Is slightly quicker, not by much, but enough to become a problem. Kieran Patterson getting ahead. Cameron Bastos trying to claw his way through. McGregor still waiting in pits, now coming out, will be getting ahead of Cameron Bastos, but not ahead of Kieran Patterson. So McGregor, who was fighting it out, rolled the dice, and unfortunately that has compromised his drive. It does look like Cameron's going to push a little bit harder to close down on McGregor, but McGregor just getting out of the pits in time will be able to hold his position. So out in front, Bernard Barkhuizen, Eric Kirstein, Bego Krobler, Tianus Buerta, and Dene van Skalkwyk going and fighting it out for the top 5. And Van Skalkwyk closing down on Buerta. Remember, they still need to do that mandatory pit stop. They're 25 minutes into the race and 38 seconds. That does come into play because we've seen guys on the last second get it into the pits and get their pit stop done and dusted. So right before the pit lane closes, they were able to get in and get themselves sorted. Skalkwyk running out a little bit wide, and I think the tires starting to drop off ever so slightly. Maybe getting into the dirty air of the McLaren is also not helping, because now you're getting all that pressure, that airflow that used to be over the front of the car to help go and compress the front of the car down in terms of aerodynamics to help you get in and out through the corners. He's within a second, which in the sim does help with a bit of a slipstream effect, but does take the air off a nose, and you have to rely more and more on mechanical grip. When your tires start to wear out, that is going to start dissipating on you very, very quickly. So they're going to have to be well aware of that situation as it stands. I think all the drivers, though, won't be taking tires, as there's not enough time and there's not enough of an advantage with the field size to be going for a set of tires. It's going to be take what you got, keep it all alive, and power your way through. And as we've seen from Kieran Patterson, Jason McGregor, and Cameron Bastos, they have only done that, taken a bit of fuel in and got going. Jason McGregor, though, running a little bit heavier, putting 11.3, he stopped in the box for 11.3, and I think that is going to be just a tad more fuel and compromise his time a little bit. He was stopped in the box, well, from entrance to exit was 32.3, so he was roughly the same time as Kieran Patterson, except for that pit stop time. He's more leaning towards Cameron de Bastos, and that is going to come into effect. Buerta now trying to run away from Van Schalkwyk. Van Schalkwyk going to be closing down, under braking, not able to get the charge just as yet. Buerta trying his might to pull away at this point from Schalkwyk, who I do want to point out started in last place, was 10th position. He's up into 5th, came to a complete stop, had 2 incidents that have compromised the drive, but Van Schalkwyk's been putting in a great bit of effort there. So for a debut outing, I take my hats off. That's very, very well done. Bernard Barkhuizen leading out with a dominating lead of 11.6 seconds, and definitely showing why he doesn't fit into the AM, doesn't fit into Pro-Am, definitely sits into the Pro field, and now starting to stretch out the gap, looking to try and maximize the points here tonight for the Raceface GT3 Sprint Series Season 11, Round 3 around Barcelona. Round 2 they had Paul Ricard, where the drivers were going and clawing their way out, where I do want to actually say a big shout out to Alan Patterson, who actually streamed that race and gave all the voices back. So Alan, big thank you very much, and good to hear Alan Patterson back on the mic. I do feel that Alan's got that David Attenborough voice, you know, the one that you can always fall in love with and you can go to sleep with. You just enjoy. It's soothing in the background versus the likes of myself, even Paul Fenter. I think Paul Fenter and myself have the same type of voice where we get overly active very, very quickly about the racing, and yeah, it's so nice to have a different in commentators. We do have like Gentleman Price, who also doesn't get overly excited. He thinks more methodically in what he's saying. So we do have a few commentators that have come through the box and have made their own voices known around the world, and made their voices known not only here in Raceface, but also in the various leagues around South Africa. So, Tienes Buerta now dealing with Van Schalkwyk, getting right behind him, closes up, under braking. Van Schalkwyk able to get on the throttle a little bit earlier this time, has now closed up behind Buerta, will be utilizing the slipstream. I think I've had too much apple juice. As they make their way through, Buerta trying to move slightly offline to break the toe. Van Schalkwyk not going to change paths, not going to do anything, starting to get a little bit more fixated on the racing ahead. And you can see just from the roll hoop, you can see, well, the roll cage, you can see how that Porsche 992 is fighting, having to just try and do minor corrections left and right to ensure that he can get a little bit closer to Tienes Buerta. Goes under braking, not able to get it just as yet. Where you got Buerta trying to get the power on, and a little bit smoother than McLaren, not as jittery all over the show, but you can see how much steering inputs are having to go in just to get around the corners, and that is starting to tell me that mechanical wear is becoming more and more. Drivers starting to lose out more and more time as they try and claw their way through. So this is going to be a proper little run between them as they claw their way through. Buerta just managing to stretch his legs ever so slightly, but now it's starting to come down. Van Schalkwyk going and hunting, looming, sitting there, waiting for the opportunity to jump on the McLaren. And much like Lando Norris waiting for the Red Bulls to get past him, I think Van Schalkwyk is going to show exactly why Angry Racing from the likes of karting has been a dominant team and will be pushing on to the back of the Hybrid Academy team. And the two are going to be slugging it out as they make their way through. Drivers still needing to do a pit stop, 19 minutes to go, 19 and a half minutes to go. Bernard Barkhuizen, Eric Costain, Bagel Krobler, Tienes Buerta, and Dion Van Schalkwyk still needing to do a pit stop. Do you want to point out Kieran Patterson's about 16 seconds behind. He has completed all his mandatory pit stops. Now, it does take roughly 32.1 from entrance to exit to be able to get out of the pit lane, so put it about 32 seconds. He's within 16, so he will be able to jump Van Schalkwyk and Buerta at this point. Also, Bego Krobler. Eric Kirstein may be a little bit of a far reach as well. Maybe a bit of a far reach, and Bernard Barkhuizen a bit of a far reach, as Van Schalkwyk did look for the inside of Tennis Buerta, not able to get it just as yet. Buerta trying to defend the inside line, runs out very, very wide, compromises the drive. Van Schalkwyk going and closing down the distance, will be trying to get that Porsche right up on the inside, going and asking the tires, begging the tires to fall a bit of more mechanical grip at this point. Going to keep behind, knowing that can't go for the overtake just as yet. Will run out a little bit wide to just try and get a little bit more of a later apex in through this next sector. Closes up on Buerta. Buerta starting to slide left and right, not able to get the drive. Will be trying to maneuver his way through. Couldn't get it just as yet. Going to land on the brakes as hard as he can, stopping dead on the apex. That kills Van Schalkwyk's drive. Goes over the curb though, and that is going to kill his drive through the final corner, and that will knock him roughly about 5 kilometers down. Van Schalkwyk looks to the inside line, taking right wheel to wheel. Now it's going to be under braking. He's on the marbles. This is going to be a bit difficult. Buerta not going to back out of it. Does go out wide. Van Schalkwyk easily gets it in. Runs out wide though. And Buerta coming across, but nearly the closest of contacts between them. I think the likes of Buerta and Van Schalkwyk both knew that that was a little bit too close for comfort. So let's go and take a look at that move once again. Getting the drive out. Closing. Takes to the hard inside line on the marbles. That is going to make things a bit difficult. Going and doing slight adjustments on the steering wheel. Hard under braking. Just too late. Couldn't get the car in. Comes across and nearly having rear contact with Tennis Buerta. Thankfully, both drivers able to get out of it. But that is going to drop Van Schalkwyk a little bit down in time, so he's going to be thinking about what's going to be the next move to close it up. Maybe, just maybe, it's going to be enough time to get in the box, get the car sorted out, and get back out ahead of the likes of Bernard Barkhuizen and Eric Kirstein, Bego Krobler, Tennis Buerta, and Van Schalkwyk in 5th. 6th, Kieran Patterson, Jason McGregor, and Cameron Bastos riding his way through. Mr. Tabasco sauce himself, a very delightful driver to go and chat to. He's trying to close down on Jason McGregor at this point. Gotta say, when I had a chat to him, he wasn't too much of a fan of a McLaren. He said it does have some pros, but just not clicking the way as he would like it to do of current. So that is starting to be a little bit more as the season progresses. You can see the to and fro's, how some drivers can click with cars, others not. Some prefer a very oversteery car, some prefer understeery. For myself, I actually tend to do better in the BMW that wants to understeer itself off the road and try and just use the throttle, slowing myself in, coast into corners, where others prefer using like the Ferrari 296, very stable car, and is very good for beginners. Bego Krobler and the Aston Martin, which was the OG in terms of Assetto Corsa Competizione. If you wanted to go and be at the front with the most stable car possible as a driver, that was the Aston Martin. Then you had the McLaren, which was frowned upon for quite some time until the new Evo came out. Then you have got the Porsche 992, which was a monster of a surprise to everyone's liking. The Lamborghini was a very good car, still continues to be a very good car, but the 992 was that little bit of a change. It went from a Porsche that wanted to wipe you out of the race the whole time and wanted to go and hang you from the rafters, to suddenly a car that's a lot more forgiving, wishes to give you a hug and go and put on a nice movie, maybe a little bit of song, have a light dance with you as well. Definitely don't push it too far because it will snap, but it is a very forgiving car. So you get it wrong, it will forgive you, but it always remembers. So as it stands, Eric Kirstein keeping a 1.3 second gap to Bego Krobler. 14.5 minutes left of this race to go, ladies and gentlemen, and it's still a little bit of open games to think about here. Tennis Buerta pulling into the pits, and Van Schalkwyk pulling into the pits. So Van Schalkwyk dives into the pits, Buerta dives into the pits, but where did Buerta lose out the time? That's where I'm getting, because Van Schalkwyk was originally behind Buerta. So let's go back 30 seconds. Over the curb. Did he get it wrong? Yep, there's the sideways moment. There's the slide. There's the drive killed. And Van Schalkwyk going, right, hit my time is now. And Tianus Buerta saying, well, I'm going to try and just circumvent that advantage and follow you in the pits as well. That is going to promote the likes of Kieran Patterson and Jason McGregor up into 4th, 5th, and Cameron de Bastos up into 6th place. But Buerta trying to outdo Van Schalkwyk. I do think Van Schalkwyk's getting a bit of repair work done to his car though, and that's why he's waiting for so long. Maybe a change of tyres as well, but that's taken out a lot of drive to him, unfortunately, and also killing off that battle he was having with the likes of Buerta. So Van Schalkwyk still in the pits as it stands, and I do feel that is a bit of a... No, that was a tyre change. 34 seconds. And, drive-through penalty, getting on the button a little bit too early. Dropping off the button. May have hooked it into second gear, turning off the pit limiter, and that's how he gets drive-through penalty, essentially making it a 2-stop race for Van Schalkwyk. Oh, man. It eats you alive when drivers start running into those type of issues, and it's something we have all done from the AM class to the pro class. No one can get away from stop-go 30-second penalties for speeding in pits, putting a wheel off circuit, getting a drive through, or just, oh man, that hurts. That hurts, unfortunately, and does take out the racing. So the main thing that you've got to consider at this point, especially in Van Schalkwyk's point of view, is to just keep calm, focus, relax, and look at the situation at hand. You're in 8th place. You're going to be scoring 8th place positional points, which is going to help you in a championship. You're in round 3. There's still some time left till the end. We've got a 7-round championship, so you still have a bit of time to make it up. And all you got to realize is there's 4 rounds ahead of you. Carry the points over. Now the main stake is to keep out of trouble from the rest of the fight. So, Bernard Barkhuizen out in front. Let's see if he's going to be pulling into the pits this time round. He's going to try and get a little bit more of a charge. Runs out wide. Not going to be pulling into the pits, so he's going to run in deep into the race. And it does look like Eric Kirstein is going to try and follow suit on that one, unless he is going to try for the undercut. Make his way through the final corner. Nope, not going to try for the undercut. And Bego Hrobler, on the other hand, is going to go for the undercut. Going and driving as fast as he can, slams on the anchors. You can see that Aston Martin squirreling under braking to try and slow it down sufficiently. But Kieran Patterson, on the other hand, will become a viable threat as Bego has just pulled into the pits. Kieran Patterson of the PWSR team, starting to get a little bit more drive, will be taking the likes of 3rd place away and starting to take that jump, which will bring him a little bit closer to the likes of Eric Kirstein when he needs to pit, because he's 23.5 seconds behind Eric Kirstein. So, Eric Kirstein is going to take roughly 32 seconds in the pits. If Kieran can break that down to roughly 20 seconds, he needs to try and pull out 3.2 seconds to make himself a little bit higher up the road. That will put him into 2nd place, and when Bernard pits, he will be able to jump that, unless Bernard Barkhuizen pits at the same time as a little bit later than Eric Kirstein at this point. So he's going to try and drive it as deep as he can into the race, but with 9 minutes and 50 seconds to go, two still need to do their mandatory pit stops. Kieran Patterson into 3rd, Jason McGregor up into 4th, Bego Hrobler up into 5th, Cameron de Bastos 4.4 seconds behind. He is going to be closing down, and do not count out the Sasquatch just as yet, because like all legendary tales, he will try and fight it out to the end. So Cameron de Bastos is going to dig deep on this one, to try catch up to Bago Crawler, and Bago is going to have to try and figure out the long game. Remember, they've taken away the use of changing tires because of how late they've got into the race. So everyone is doing a fuel stop at this point. Van Schalkwyk still circulating, going to be scoring 8th place minimum, unless guys land up with problems ahead of him where he will close up the distance. He's still quite far behind. He's roughly about a lap or so behind. But unless there is a disconnect ahead of him, I think he will be maintaining that 8th place. Just needs to keep driving. So if you are part of the Angry Racing team, just convince the driver to keep going until the checkered flag and to keep his head on his shoulders. Don't try and overdrive the car at this point. Focus on the long game that's needed. For Bernard Barkhuizen and the KSR factory team, now the question starts coming in. Eric Kirstein is 15.3 seconds behind. So where is that going to come in? Where's that stop going to happen? Because you're starting to run out of time. Your competitor is close enough that will get past you when you do your stop. Unless, and this is a big unless, they make a crucial mistake. Turnus Buerta out in 7th place, was a bit slow through the last corner, and that is going to compromise. So Kirstein still going on. Barkhuizen carrying on another lap, will be trying to stretch it out. Let's see if Kirstein's going to do the same, maneuvering his way through the final 3 corners. Hard on the brakes, able to get it going. Now into long right-hander, where you got to just feather the throttle through. He's going to keep going. So Kirstein looking to find out when is Barkhuizen going to pit. That's his main focus, is keep an eye on Barkhuizen. Kieran Patterson, on the other hand, has closed down 22 seconds behind 2nd place. So still close enough to Kirstein to go and jump him. Now, if he can break that down a little bit further, he can get into a viable threat to Bernard Barkhuizen. Just looking at how it all is at the moment, it takes 32.1 seconds as the fastest in and out to get it going. From entrance, stop, get going, 32.1 seconds. That's the one you're aiming for. Well, the likes of Kirstein still need to do that pit stop. Bernard Barkhuizen still need to do that pit stop. Both doing a 44.7, 44.9, where Kieran Patterson's doing a 44.5. That last lap time, Kieran was a little bit slower, did a 44.757. Eric Kirstein did a 45.407, and Bernard Barkhuizen a 44.9 as his last lap time. So Kieran was quicker than both of them on that last lap, but it's all about managing the tires now, managing the race. And if you've got any life left in the tires, any life left in the car, and your fueling is right, go for it. Bernard Barkhuizen pulling into the pits. I'm sure we're going to see Kirstein going to follow to try and circumvent it. Otherwise, he's going to go for the overcut. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. I really don't think he's going to be able to go for the overcut. He's going to try, though. So Kirstein's going to keep his foot in it and try and get past. Kieran Patterson is trying to close down the distance to the likes of Barkhuizen, who has just come to the stop in the box now. So Patterson needs to go and dial it in a little bit more, head in it to close down and get past Barkhuizen, who's at the end of the pit lane as it stands. Kieran Patterson going and standing on the drive to get as much pace. If you want to talk about putting his foot through the floor, that's going to be it. Closing. You can see Barkhuizen on his right-hand side. Will be trying to go under braking. Barkhuizen trying to accelerate, and it does look like Barkhuizen holds the inside line. Kieran, though, tries to come back at him. Barkhuizen did drift out wide. A little bit of contact between the two, but Kieran managing to take back the position. So Barkhuizen now holding that inside line, tries to force Kieran offline, couldn't do it. Both of them going hammer and tongs at each other. Barkhuizen's going to try and go around the outside, couldn't get it all sorted out. Kieran going defensive, holding on that apex, will be marching his way through. They are 20 seconds behind. So at this point, this is where the questions start coming in. To work together, start working together. Don't fight each other. You got to leave it till the last little moments. As Eric Kirstein still needs to pit. So if there's any way to go and start texting each other in terms of the team bosses that are yelling in the ears, telling the two, work together, look at the lap times, start breaking down. You can go and get both yourselves above Eric Kirstein, then go to war with one another. Start thinking the strategy game to this, where Eric Kirstein's going to be looking at this going, this is his worst nightmare come true, as both cars are right on top of one another and can be a threat. So he's going to try and keep going right into the end of the race. That is going to be taking out a bit of time. Kieran Patterson defending, now trying to get rid of Barkhuizen and try to dispatch him as quick as possible. Barkhuizen, on the other hand, is still trying to get those tires back up to where they need to be, especially after he's just only completed a lap after his pit stop now, and will be focusing on the charge. Taking a look at the lap time, so Eric Kirstein's last lap time was a 1:45.717, while Kieran Patterson a 1:44.5. So Kieran is slightly quicker to try and close down on Kirstein and take away those minuscule seconds that are needed to go and get into first place and take the spot. But Kirstein can pull a rabbit out of the hat on this one if he can dial the car in just a little bit more, gets a bit sideways, does touch the brakes, trying to settle the rear. That is not going to help him at this point. So he just has to try and figure out that 296, going and start talking sweet words to it at this point, whispering, going and stroking the dash, saying, listen, be my friend, and we will go and get an ice cream at the end of this, because we know what's behind us at this point. Kieran Patterson going defensive, does hold back Bernard Barkhuizen and does lose out a second on Eric Kirstein. So he's going to have to be well aware on that. Where Bernard Barkhuizen still under a second, is starting to close down a little bit of distance. Tries to go a little bit later under braking. That BMW just not getting the same rotation as what he needs it to go. Kalen Mauer jumping in and saying, how's it? He's watching from the grandstands. Kalen Mauer, for anyone that doesn't know, part of the Pace Motorsport, going in watching all the drivers and some friends going around the circuit. Also, if I remember correctly, Kalen Mauer, you went and raced overseas. You represented South Africa. So good to have you. Good to have you. A bit of a superstar going and sitting in the grandstands this time around. So good to have you out here. Thumbs up. Glad to have you. Eric Kirstein into the pits, and that does drop him down into third place. So the race is on. 1 minute and 45 seconds to go. And it is Kieran Patterson, Bernard Barkhuizen, under a second, will be fighting for first place. Barkhuizen trying to get a little bit more drive, did lose out 0.3 of a second. That's not going to help him out at this point, so he's going to have to try and figure out what's going to work for him as they make up some time. Eric Kirstein drops down behind Bago Krobler, so he comes out in 5th position as it stands. Kieran trying to stretch open the gap with Bernard Barkhuizen right behind him. Bernard not going to back down from this fight. Will try and close down, runs out a little bit wide, closer to the sand trap this time, and that is going to slow him down ever so slightly. But Kieran also starting to struggle with those rears on the McLaren, not looking as stable as it once was. 54 seconds to go, and now it is down to the clock at this point. And I do think this is where they start working out how much fuel is left in the tank. How many laps are they able to squeeze out of it, because they will have one more lap once they come across the line. So they will be on the final lap. How much have you saved to go and ensure that you can do this one more lap? If you've got one more lap left in those tires, it's best to use it. In the case of Formula 1, make sure you do not bring any of that rubber home. Use it on the track. So Kieran Patterson doing exactly that to open up the distance, as we hear Jim calling final lap. Bernard Barkhuizen in 2nd place. Jason McGregor out in 3rd. Bago Krobler trying to close down the distance underneath him. Eric Kirstein also doing his best. Cameron de Bastos in 6th. 7th, Tiernas Buerta. And then for Skoltvik in 8th. We would have Tinian Kube in 9th. Unfortunately, he's out of the race. And Alan Patterson, unfortunately, early on, landing up with that disqualification penalty coming in. Would like to find out how that actually happened, because not too often that we get to see it. I do think, if I remember correctly, because Paul Fenter had it, he sped into the pits, and that gave him a penalty. plus getting out the box, and he said if he moved, he would have been disqualified. I think Alan might have had the same thing, but unfortunately, ACC, I'm a little bit behind on in terms of racing in the sim, and usually I'm going too slow to even go fast to hit the speed limit, so generally I get pushed by the marshals to try and make me go quicker. Kieran Patterson, though, still opening up the gap, and if he can maintain it at the moment, he will be taking first place and walking away with maximum points for round 3 right here at Barcelona as he carves his way through. Not much time to go. 4 corners to get it right. 1, 2, then you've got one quick right-hander, and then into the final long power away, and you can see Van Schalkwyk lifting to allow Kieran to come through. Kieran Patterson taking first place, Bernard Barkhuizen taking second, as we saw Van Schalkwyk taking 8th. Jason McGregor at this point will be taking 3rd place and taking the final spot on the podium. Bego Krobler finishing in 4th, Eric Kirstein in 5th. 6th going to Cameron de Bastos, Tiernas Puerta rounding out in 7th place. 8th going to Van Schalkwyk, as I said earlier, on his outing. Absolutely great stuff from our drivers, all having to use their head a little bit this time around, not going and working on trying to carve their way through traffic, but ensuring that the strategy works. Then we've got Ferrell, who was, he didn't actually start the race, but did join late, along with Richard van Heerde and Alan Patterson, unfortunately getting disqualified. Tenny and Kube in 9th position. So there is our standings for the end, ladies and gentlemen, for the likes of our race right here at Barcelona. And what race it was, and can't wait to see how it all progresses a little bit forward. A couple of drivers unable to make it, we're late to the start line, and will be missing out on some valuable points for their championship. But that brings to the close of the Raceface GT3 Sprint Series. Tomorrow night, we will be having our GT3 Series, where there will be 1 hour and 20 minutes of racing, 2 mandatory pit stops, and a lot more guessing of what's going to happen out on the circuit. Who will be able to run triumphant at the end? Who will be able to power their way to the finish line and take the final spots? Well, only time will tell, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you very much for joining us, and to all the team, spectators, drivers, and everyone going and keeping an eye out. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon to keep an eye on all the information coming through. Also, once again, a shout out to Alan Patterson, who was streaming last week with all the action from the PWSR team. So thank you to Alan, and we will see you next time right here at Raceface.pro. From myself, Stephen Koenig, enjoy your evening, and like always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody.